Greetings, this is Fred in Alaska. Good morning. It's a beautiful Alaskan day. Got a bird up there singing to me. Today I'm gonna share with you it's kind of disturbing. Well, it's very disturbing. So this guy Mark, Carolyn, and Scott, they went on an Alaskan adventure. They started up in Fairbanks, had a great time, did a bunch of touristy stuff over that way. They came down, they flew with a service out of Talkeetna, checked out the Denali, Mount Denali. And then they made it down to the Kenai Peninsula, and they were down by Skilak Lake. Now, they ran into somebody, a local. They weren't part of a tour service, so they weren't obligated to anyone, but they met a local who volunteered to take them out on this boat out on Skilak Lake. Of course, they're game for it. I would be. Shit, let's go. So they take off in the morning, and they go all the way to the other side, and they see a bunch of cabins and stuff, and they notice a game trail cutting up, going back towards some mountains. These particular mountains are northeast of Skilak Lake. There's a short little run of mountain, another one that's almost like two fingers, and then the third finger has a quasi half bowl. So they decide, hey, let's hike up in there. That looks like a good spot. Well, as they're going along the trail, the game trail, they started noticing some upside down trees. They weren't concerned. They figured someone was decorating it and figured, hey, we'll check it out. They look at them, they took pictures or whatever. But what ends up happening is they go up as far as they can till the game trail just goes into a bunch of a thick underbrush of alders and willows and whatnot. Well, the local that they were with kept saying he heard something, and Mark, Caroline, and Scott, they weren't hip to noises in the woods per se, but they started picking up on the noise too, and it sounded like almost similar to a weird drum beat, but it was like someone humming it versus a drum. It was real low and rhythmic, and they couldn't place it. They said it sounded like it was coming from multiple spots, and it was like it would be louder on one side and quieter on the other, and then vice versa. It was like, looking back on it, they thought it was a form of communication. They weren't too sure, so they got kind of creeped out. The locals said that's not normal, so let's get back to the boat and go enjoy ourselves on the water. So as they're making their way back, now they had to hike back in there a little ways. Excuse me, bacon. They had to hike back in there a little ways, and they were gingerly making their way out, trying to keep track of what they were hearing. They started hearing it more and more, almost like the rhythmic sounds of that low humming were moving in on them, but they heard no sound other than that humming, that rhythmic humming. Well, once they get closer to the boat, it seemed to die off. So they calmed down, and a couple of I believe it was Scott and Caroline, they were smokers, so they stopped and they were enjoying a cigarette, just kind of looking around. And they're approximately, 200 yards from the boat. They know it's right down through this trail, and it's not far away, so they're just kind of taking in the scenery because there's a little bit of an opening. So where the sun was at the time was kind of in their face, and they were looking across this little meadow to the trees, and the trees were in the shade except for the tops of them. And as they're sitting there smoking, all of a sudden the local just takes off, doesn't say nothing, starts hauling ass down the trail. And they all kind of chuckled. They were like, oh, he must have the runs or something, They weren't paying attention to what he was. When he gets down the trail a little ways, he starts screaming, run, run. So they start looking around at each other like, what the hell are we running from? They didn't see anything. They didn't notice. And then directly across from them in that tree line, they noticed movement, and then they heard that scream. it really jarred them and startled them to where, you know, they dropped what they were doing and they started hauling ass. But as soon as they started running, this thing ran along, they could hear it running parallel to them, and it passed them, and then it ran out into the trail in front of them. They said when it got into the trail, it was standing there and it was kind of like heaving, but not like it was breathing hard. It was heaving like angry, like it was there to do no good kind of feeling. They just all dropped down and they were just trembling. They had no weapons. They're tourists. They didn't, I mean, they had cameras. They didn't even think to take a picture of this thing. They were freaked the fuck out. Now, as it's heaving, it starts doing the slow, methodical kind of back and forth stepping towards them, and they had nothing. They all they had was just their fear right there on the ground. This thing slowly walked up to them, swaying around, and then walks off into the brush off to their left. And just as they're stopping, they're starting to calm down. They're all shaking really hard. They hear a huff behind them, and another one walks around into their view, and then walks off into the trees. And then directly behind them on the other side, they heard the same thing, and they heard it walk off. And then they heard in unison the three hairy men walk off in different directions. They said that it seemed like it took forever, but in reality, this actually took about 3 to 5 minutes of straight terror from when they saw it. They dropped down. They had nothing they could do, to the walking up, the walking off, the other one showing itself. All of this was really drawn out. As soon as the sounds dissipated enough, they jumped up and started running for that boat. Well, the local had already fired up the boat and was doing big loops out in the water, waving and yelling and looking around for other people to go maybe get some help from another boat. Well, they were all at the water's edge. They walked out into their, into waist deep water, cold water. They didn't want to be there. So the guy comes over and beaches the boat to where they can get up safely. Again, this wasn't a guided tour. It was the local just being nice and showing them around. Well, they commenced to tell them what was happening, and the local said, I saw 5 or 6 of them behind us on the trail. That's when I turned and ran. And then they explained what they did. So what they determined is out of that group, one cut them off and the other one sized them up, checking them out, came up. Caroline said that she could feel it sniffing her hair, because her conditioner, she had a real fruity, flowery smell like women like. But this thing was, she could feel her ponytail that she had on through the hole of her hat kind of sucking up towards nostrils when this was going on. Fuck that. They want to come back to Alaska. It's like, I don't mean to laugh, but so I guess it really sparked their morbid curiosity. Mark and Carolyn definitely want to come back up, and they asked me if I would take them back over to that part of Skilak Lake. And that was, that place that they had this happen is actually a place I was planning on filming part of the documentary anyway. However, logistically speaking, I gotta prepare for something a little bit different. North Fork of the Golcana will be something I do to kill time before the Nuyukuk trip. But yeah, Mark and Caroline, I don't think I'll be doing the Skilak thing. But if you're up here before we go up to the North Fork of the Golcana, you're more than welcome to come. But just be aware, I can't guarantee shit as far as safety or any of that other stuff. It's not that kind of trip. So anyway, another thing I wanted to share is there's a what is it called? There's a group of people down the road that they're part of some kind of group club or whatever. They were asking me if I would check out what was going on with one of their they have a big chicken coop, and quite honestly, I don't mind checking that kind of stuff out. I really don't. I talk to people from all over the United States. They'll send me an email and just want to discuss stuff. I'm not on some ivory tower. I'm just Fred in Alaska, so talking to me is no problem. But it's not that I don't want to be helpful. I don't want to get caught up in running around to potential sighting places and things of this nature. It'd be cool, but logistically, it's too expensive to be running around like that. I told him if something more compelling happens, visual sightings versus just a couple missing chickens, I'd definitely be interested. It's not my culture to be a researcher by any means. Like the trip to the North Fork of the Golcana, I want to go and give you guys a visual of the area of, I think I have 4 of the emails shared from that particular area. I think there's 2 more I haven't shared yet. But yeah, so it's going to be more like, hey, this is where it happened, and if there's evidence to be found, we'll see it. If not, so be it. But my main focus as far as like the documentary is the cultural aspect over on the Nuyakuk with First Nations. So that's the main drive. When you hear me talk about Golcana or Kenai Peninsula, those are just little side things. It's not the main focus of what I'm doing. Currently there's over 140 active missing person bulletins. Probably more. I haven't checked it in about 3 weeks. There's a large number of missing people already, and people can make the argument, oh, per population, that's not crazy or whatever. We're 5 months in, and there's already almost a couple hundred people missing. We're known to have 500 to 2,000 go missing a year, and it fluctuates, and not all of them are due to, some people wander off, some people are taken off, and some want to disappear. Fair enough. And some aren't reported when they're found. Fair enough. But there's far more going on. Far more going on. I haven't come across anything tangible yet, but trying to get information on missing people up here, you can get it from the active bulletin on Alaska Department of Safety. But the hard part is like the Freedom of Information Act. I'll have to use in order to get things like 911 calls for disturbances of strange creature, or something, anything along those nature. That nature. It's really, you're not going to find the information very easily. Those wanting an encounter, you really got to be careful what you wish for. You really do. It's all fun as an idea. It's all fun on paper, but the reality of it is nothing nice. But yeah, I wanted to share that information with you guys, and I'm going to be going to the site of a where a guy lost his dog, just up the road here, across the Little Susitna River. I'm going to be doing that maybe later on today or tomorrow with my buddy Carl, so keep an eye out for that. Going to do a little excursion and check out the area he was at. I'm just curious. From what he told me, he said it seemed like back in the trees across some muskeg on the other side is where he believes they live in that area. So I don't know. I'm not doing a whole lot, so I might just check that out. But anyway, thanks for joining me today. We'll see you on the next one.